work for several years, going back and forth between planning departments and health departments in Baltimore, San Francisco, and in Philly now. I chose this track here, I think, just to learn more. Like, I'm really interested in health disparities, and I kind of arrived at this not necessarily through like through like the idea of race disparities, but I know that's kind of where the discussion has gone. So I'm trying to learn more about it and trying to just make those connections, because I feel like some of those connections are getting lost as the conversation is shifting.
Great. Thanks, Keith.
Yep.
How about, Rachel, that was you. I couldn't see your name when you were on the screen. How about you just do a quick intro and talk about what you hope to learn today?
I work at the Community Progress Council here in New York. I'm a workforce development coach. And I also serve as a chair on our DEI committee. So there's so many different levels of this for me, and, helping people in the workforce aspect, learning of the systemic racism that's happening. And, as people are submitting resumes and interviewing, and then also for our agency, I'm trying to pick up some information on how we move forward with our committee as we talk on our DEI committee.
Great. Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for being here. How about Angela?
Sure, thank you. My name is Angela Roebuck, and I'm with Capital Area Head Start. I am a health coordinator, but I also serve on a anti-bias committee within Capital Area Head Start, and we provide a safe place for people to talk about their shared experiences with systemic racism, even biases that they have experienced within the agency. And so I feel that we're in our infancy stage of really working through becoming a climate that is fair and equitable for everyone, and eliminating biased behaviors and practices. And so I feel this urgency that we need to do this, before it no longer is a fad. But there's resistance that I see from people that feel that they're under attack because we're addressing these issues.
Right.
And it's not that, what she was talking about, the sum of us.
Mm-hmm.
It's for a win-win situation, but
Mm-hmm.
how do you get past people's defenses so that we can really start working to something that's going to benefit all of us and our community?
Great. Thanks, Angela. That's really helpful to know, and will guide the conversation. How about Shireen? Am I saying it right?
Yes, you are.
Great.
Hi, I'm Shireen Beckles. I'm a progress coach at Community Progress Council in New York. I'm originally from New York. I joined this group to learn more about diversity, because I'm also on our diversity DEI committee at work, and it's a very interesting conversation for me, and I'm willing to learn more about it so I can help my community.
Great, thanks. So glad you're here, Shireen. And I see Kay Malone. Hi, I'm not sure where Kay is, but you'll tell me.
Kay is Kim. Yes,
Great.
Kim Malone, yes, and I am with the GCAAP Erie County Area Agency on Aging. I am the director of our senior center program. So we operate 7 senior centers, have a few subcontracted centers, but as well I coordinate our PA Medi program, which some might have heard that as a prize before. We had a name change. We counsel people on their Medicare options. And then also the coordinator also for our health and wellness program. And my main interest is really, I'm being a sponge right now. I just want to absorb in as much as I can, because I want to make sure that, we're looking at what we can do to increase inclusivity. We have a lot of really a great diverse group in our community, but we don't necessarily see them coming through the thresholds. So you got to ask the why, and what can we do to change that? And also too, with registration forms, things that we put out there, again, with the PA Medi, the Medicare counseling program, just making sure that that language barrier is also potentially removed. And so again, pretty much sponge right now. I want to absorb and learn as much as I can, and I'm learning a great deal. So I appreciate this opportunity.
Great. Well, I'm glad all of you are here. And Kim, I will tell you, Danny's going to be so thrilled that you're here. He was on yesterday. I know because obviously he's one of our agencies, but he is very interested in really amplifying this work. So I'm gonna make a personal note to mention that we had some GCAC in the room. So let me frame the conversation around the DEI continuum. With the idea that I want to kind of get all of your points met. So it's a topic that we can kind of focus on, but we don't have to stay there necessarily and be real strict and narrow. But I did want to, I'm actually going to see if I can share my screen, because I had a way to kind of guide the conversation a bit for us. And I also want to be mindful about really taking some notes. So I want to make sure, can you all see this? You can just unmute. You can unmute. You can see it. Yeah, you can see it. Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
Yes.
So in the course of really talking about this topic, understanding the DEI continuum, I wanted to focus on 4 areas that we can kind of focus on. The 4 areas are, what do we know? And we'll talk through that. And I'm going to make sure we get you all in the room. What's missing? And Kim, I'm actually going to lean back on you on that one, because I think you talked about some things. What's working? And then what do we need to know? What do we need more of in terms of this work? The simple answer to the DEI continuum is to understand that, as I mentioned before we came in, it's a journey. And so everybody comes from a different place. They're motivated for different reasons, and they're looking to accomplish different things. So I just want to make sure we make that point. But I just want to go around the room, and we can spitball here. So there's no right or wrong answers. But when you think about the DEI continuum, and when you think about this topic, what do we know? And I'll just start making some notes about what comes up for you all. What do you know about the DEI continuum and where we are? Any quick thoughts?
We need to get away from HR checkboxes.
Great. Okay.
Everybody's at a different spot.
Yeah. Let's see. HR checkboxes. Everyone's at a different spot, right? Anything else?
A lot of it
Michelle.
is,
Hi, Michelle.
I was just going to say that there are points of uncomfortability.
Okay. Points of uncomfortability. Okay.
Hi, Winslow. Sorry, my computer isn't acting as nice as it used
Oh,
to.
okay.
My video's being weird. So.
Okay, great. Well, just glad you're here. I thought I heard your voice, but I didn't. When we did the round robin, I didn't see you. So uncomfortable. There we go. Let's do it.
I don't even know if it's a word. I just sometimes make up things as
We'll
they
leave
come
it
out
there
of
for
my
now.
mouth. Okay.
What else do we know about this continuum?
I think for myself is where is your starting point? It's easy to get lost in that starting point. And again, so many words of wisdom have been shared with us. One thing that's in my mind is, if you want to go fast, start out alone. If you want to go far, go with a group.
Right.
So that's kind of, what my focus is, that starting point that's involving your group and how you can all be working on that commitment to getting it done.
Mm-hmm. So, and we're not going in any particular order, but I'm going to address that, Kim, since you mentioned it. Probably the thing to understand about the continuum itself is to understand essentially that it's a journey, and the starting point is where you start. So there's no formal starting point to get on this journey. I think Michael kind of summed it up in in the conversation just that we just had, for many of us, it's personal, right? You know, we're just committed. I think, Angela, you mentioned, you kind of alluded to this, that there's a commitment to change. There's a commitment to really wanting to better our community. So probably the best thing to, the one thing to remember about the DEI continuum is that there are different levels. There are people, and we kind of break it up at CAAP, where we say, I'm just getting started, I'm in the middle of the road, I'm well on my way. You know, and those are kind of categories to think about as you go in this work. And really what that's intended to do is help you know where your learning is, right? So there may be books that you want to read, there may be conversations you want to have, and it's okay to be wherever you are, but to know that as we talk about DEI and as we talk about all these things around diversity, equity, and inclusion, the end point is justice, right? And we talked about it in the panel. It's really about changing our communities. It's not just about you know, improving our workplaces and really doing the internal work. It's really the external work. So if you think about what that end looks like, it's really justice. And so when you begin to see the change in your community, that's really when you know you're at that end point. But I wanted to kind of hit that there because as somebody said, where's your starting point? And I want to make sure we address that. What else do we know about the continuum? What else do we know about this journey?
This is never ending. There isn't a finish line.
Great. Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly right. It's never ending. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
That's a tricky question. I mean, I think it can be both, right? Like both sides of the coins. I think once you get to a certain point, when you're addressing the bad, you can get to the good, but you always have to improve for it to be better because change is always going to take place within society. So as these changes take place, we have to continue to change, you know, the world.
You know, it reminds me, Rachel, when we talk about poverty, particularly when we talk about systemic poverty, it is deeply rooted, right? This is really, really, really tough work. So I would offer that it's not so much that it's never ending, it's just that the work is so deep and it's so much to do that it's just, sometimes we can't see the end because there's so much in front of us. But understand, particularly when we're talking about poverty and really helping remove those barriers to equity, it can feel like a long way out. But I always offer that when you get into this work, always focus on what you can do. What is my contribution? What can be my beginning and end, so that you don't feel, because as a community organizer, I will tell you, burnout is real. You can get into stuff and just lose yourself, and it's never a good thing. But I appreciate that thought. I do see that we have one. I can't see everybody, but I know Rochelle joined, and then Heather Slaughter. Heather, are you there?
If I can get my computer open. Yeah.
Can I bring you all into the conversation? Did Keith leave? I don't see Keith anymore, but maybe he's still here. But I wanted to bring you all into the room. Heather, can you share with us a little bit about who you are, your agency, and what made you join this room? And then Rochelle, if you can do the same.
Heather Slaughter from Self-Determination Housing of Pennsylvania. We just last year merged with Inglis, which is based out of Philadelphia. We are a statewide organization. I'm based on the western side of PA and cover 7 counties when it comes to affordable housing, homelessness, working with the COCs and so forth in Western PA. My work has been wrapped around cultural competency for years. From the 12 years I worked in juvenile detention is probably where it started, and seeing kind of how things all intersected there. Currently, I've actually initiated our DEI movement in our much larger organization of Inglis, which has about 750 employees. So I've kind of got the conversation started. We've actually taken the initiative to hire consultants to start beginning the work that way. And in the meantime, I guess at my level, we're having the conversations. So we are bi-weekly having conversations surrounding needs that we see that need to be addressed, or concerns that we're seeing as we try and stay aligned with the much larger organization spectrum. We're also currently participating in a book club as we facilitate the conversation around being what an ally looks like and what an advocate looks like. So,
right, great. And thanks for bringing those two up. I'm going to lean on you, Heather, because I can see I see some stuff, right?
I've also presented on racial inequalities in housing.
That's right.
So when you talk about the complex layers, it's like my brain is always like on a personal level, it's on that community level, it's on the systemic level, it's on the workplace level. I'm just like, I'm all over the place sometimes.
Great,
so,
great. Well, I'm so glad you're here because you're gonna help me co-facilitate this. Great. Rochelle, did you want to share with the group? Share anything? Just introduce yourself, and I know you, but everybody else may not.
Yes, again, I'm sorry for my video not working, but my name is Rochelle Abbott. I'm the Chief Operations and Planning Officer at STEP. We're the community action agency in kind of central Pennsylvania. I am a planner by trade. I do see some other planners on here, which is pretty awesome. And we as STEP have been doing quite a lot of DEI stuff, as Winslow knows, and that is pretty great. Working with CAAP on those. We do have a social justice task force for our staff, been doing a lot of internal planning. And I think the idea of like internal assessment and understanding of like where that starting point is totally important. But I agree, it's never ending. The work is, I think there's just always more to learn and just more to do.
Rochelle, by any chance, were you able to catch any of yesterday?
Yes, I was there the whole time. Yep.
Okay.
I appreciate the shout out.
You saw me. We tried to remember. I didn't want to call you out, but I was so impacted by that, and it was such a good example of how we can affirm. And it was a really good example of inclusion. So I just want to make sure we keep propping that up because it was really a really good thing that your group did. But glad you both are here, and so let's dig into more. When we talk about what do we know about this continuum, I like what everybody's talked about so far. Anything else we want to add in what do we know? And that could also mean, like we see here, someone mentioned points of discomfort. It's never ending. I added, Heather, the idea of it can start with having conversations. Anything else we want to add here?
It's emotional work.
Emotional. Okay, great. And what is that? I know what that means, Heather. I know I know what that means, but what does it mean for you? And then maybe we can go around and see what other folks think.
Yeah, when I think emotional, I think of that psychological safety. And we talk about making safe spaces to have these courageous conversations and having a safe space. But I've kind of drifted now to more of a gracious space because you can't always promise a safe space because you're going to get emotional and it does get personal. So it's not always safe because not everybody feels safe to share, and be vulnerable. So what we talk about more is gracious space, is that we're going to have grace for each other as we go through these very difficult conversations and ideas and experiences.
Well, just so you know I'm going to take that, right? I'm going to take gracious spaces. I love that. And I say that because I think when we're in the panel, Michael kind of shifted from safe spaces to brave spaces. But I think you're doing something different because sometimes, like you point out, we can't control what's going to happen. And so it's tough to label them, but gracious is one of those things that we can always look to do.
I think that graciousness allows us to be more vulnerable with each other, to share those lived experiences. So we're going to get further in the work when we're having these conversations.
Great. Yeah. This little spelling thing's going to drive me nuts. Anything else in terms of what we know? And before I leave that, anyone want to offer your thoughts about that thing emotional? What does that mean? Does it mean anything for any of the other of you, if I can say that right?
I can think of emotional at times when we start this work and begin to have those conversations. As Heather said, some people are re-traumatized as they try to share their stories.
Yeah, I think when we first started, when we got into this, I can't remember who it was, but someone mentioned it can be stressful. These are difficult conversations to have, and how do we process it? You know, how do we process it to lead to real good outcomes? And so, Heather, I'm glad you mentioned the emotional part, because I think that's important. You know, and I'll add here, when I think about the emotional part of it, I refer back to what I did earlier, which is you can lose yourself. I say that because I used to do community organizing years ago, and I get so focused on changing the community that I can tell you, I stopped eating. You know, my health kind of deteriorated. I wasn't sleeping, you know, because I'm so committed to helping other folks that you hear this term often, is you become selfless, right? And selflessness is never ever a good thing. People will tell you that. So whenever you hear someone kind of bragging that they're working 40 and 50 hours a week, don't brag about that, because self-care is as important to anything in this work. We have to be able to take care of ourselves in order to take care of other folks. So I just wanted to kind of dig in on that emotional part, because I think it is something that we need to know about as we look at this work. Anything else?
Evolving.
Shireen?
Yes, I want to add evolving and open-mindedness.
Okay,
Because,
evolving?
yes.
Okay.
To be part of DEI, you have to have an open mind, and to understand the work and understand where the future of DEI is going, you need to have an open mind.
Great. Let's unpack, because you know you're going to hear me say that all the time. Let's unpack that, right? Open-mindedness. What comes up for me? I hear crucial conversations. I hear difficult dialogue. I hear listening and receptiveness. What did you hope that we would take away from this idea of open-mindedness?
Respect for each other's stories.
Great.
Respect for our clients, where they're coming from, what they've been through, and not always knowing the right answer. And okay to tell someone, I don't know, but I will find out for you.
Right. Okay. Great. Yeah. That's really good. I
Shereen,
wanted to clarify that.
Can I add on to that?
Oh, sure. I'm sorry, Heather, go ahead.
That thought also, when I'm thinking of open-mindedness, you know, as if you're working in direct service, is that, you know, those personal biases, recognizing them in terms of, you know, maybe how we refer to our clients, and understanding that compassion fatigue can be setting in. There was another word I was going to use in another direction, but definitely being open-minded to how we're referring to our clients, even when we're referring to them with a coworker or colleague, understanding that their challenges are not going to be the same challenges as ours for various different reasons. I'm just going to stop there.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Heather. I will share something. I'm hoping all of you were part of the panel discussion, but there was a point during the panel where Monica made the point that everybody isn't from Pennsylvania. Everybody wasn't born in this country. Everybody, and that hit me because, it's part of what we talk about where it's unconscious bias. I just assume everybody has a similar background to me. Everyone has a 2-family home. Everyone grew up in the city. Everyone, there's some assumptions that we make. And so when you talk about, Heather, being careful, how do we refer to our clients? I'm reminded of that. And also, Shireen, when we talk about respect for each other's stories, your background is your story. Where you came from, what your experiences are. Those are all your stories. And I think these are really good points to make in terms of what we know about this continuum. Anything else we want to add before we talk about maybe what's missing? All right. Let me see if I can, Oh, great. I can move my cursor. What's missing when we think about this journey, when we think about this continuum? What's missing? What, when you see that those words, what comes up for you in terms of thinking about this work? Anything? And you all are free to keep.
Compassion.
Say it again, Shireen.
Compassion.
Compassion. Oh, love that. You all are free to unmute. I think we're small enough if you want to just take your mutes off. Compassion.
The first thing that comes to my mind is this zero tolerance policies and policies in general. I've heard that so many times over the years, but understand that these policies don't always apply to everybody the same way.
So when we think about what's missing,
policies in general, I'm thinking workplace policies. That's where my brain is right now.
Okay.
Workplace policies. We have to understand that those policies don't always affect everybody the same. Mm-hmm. And that needs to be taken into consideration. So specifically there was, I don't want to say an incident, but we had something happened where, HR kind of said, well, we have a zero tolerance policy. And I said, I don't give a shit about, excuse my language, your zero tolerance policy, because this stuff still exists behind the scenes. Right. And what I was referring to was the ostracism, the bullying, especially amongst those like frontline staff. These things are still existing, and that's that culture that we want to get away from. Mm-hmm. And policy has a lot to do with that.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. And for our operational folks on the call, that's a really good takeaway to have, really thinking about how policies affect people and impact them. So I'm glad you mentioned that, Heather. Compassion, Shireen mentioned that. Shireen, talk us a little bit through that. What does that mean for you, compassion?
So when I start working at CPC, one of the conversation that came up was the Black Lives Matter movement and individuals feeling like, oh, that shouldn't be a conversation. And I'm like, but you have to understand, you might not have to deal with that, but someone else has. How about we have a little compassion for who is dealing with situations like that? I may not have experienced racism, but if somebody have, why can't we have compassion for them? It's not that we're saying one is less than the other. It's understanding and giving that same, I guess, feeling. If it was happening to you, you would want someone to have that same compassion for you. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of tied into my evolving and being open-mindedness, because everyone has something different that they're dealing with. And if we have compassion for our coworkers and the clients that we serve in the community that we live in, we can understand their stories and help evolve the community, help make the community a better place. Because I was on yesterday, and one of the things that the presenter said was poverty. It can be erased if we just take the time. Mm-hmm. Because the same way it was created, it can be erased. Mm-hmm. But if we don't have compassion for the community that we live in, how can we do that?
Yeah, I when you talked about compassion, as I was listening to, the stories about Black Lives Matter and folks being able to connect with people where they are, I was reminded that one of the words that was kind of peppered almost consistently throughout the panel discussion was this word empathy, right? And empathy really is this idea of, one, I want to know your story. I want to know what your experience was. That's part of it, but it's also, to me, and maybe someone else can offer empathy, but to me, it's also saying, I didn't have that experience, but I trust that your experience was as deep, impactful, perhaps hurtful, all those things that it was for you. And I think that's what empathy is. So to your point, Shireen, when we hear, that example that you gave, when people talked about why Black Lives Matter is important to them, that's really what I think about. This idea that perhaps maybe I didn't have the same experience, but I understand and hear from you that you did, and I trust that it's exactly how you described it. So, I like that idea of empathy and compassion and what's missing in this work. And just so you all know, we're really trying to compile a lot of this data so that we can begin to kind of do some level setting as we think about doing this work across Pennsylvania. So I appreciate all of the support. Anything else on what's missing? Angela, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think sometimes, well, I can just speak for me, not knowing what your organization's vision and mission is for DEI, because being in the dark, not having that information and not knowing where you're going and not knowing the outcome goals or even what the goals are, can kind of leave you floating around and confused with, well, what is permissible? Where are we going and how is it going to be done? And what's my part in working together to make it happen?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Angela. And what's interesting about it, and perhaps I can kind of bring Rochelle in for a little bit, but we actually have an equity committee at CAAP where we're really trying to deepen our work. And we are grappling with this. We are grappling with what is our vision? What's our mission for this work? And mainly because I think we mentioned it, it's so long-term, it's so vast in terms of the things that we want to do. Sometimes it's really difficult to put in and really hone in on what do we have the capacity to change in this moment? What do we have the capacity to change perhaps 5 or 10 years from now? But to your point, you're exactly right. We have to know. We have to be focused on where we're trying to go and how we want to get there. So I'm so glad you mentioned organization, vision, and mission. Rochelle, I'm sorry. Rochelle, did you want to add anything just to bring you in the room? Rochelle's actually on our CAAP Equity Committee.
Yes, I think that really is kind of pertinent to kind of the continuum, is like, how do you know? And I think it's always going to be a challenge in terms of like, how are you going to know what all the steps in the plan and process are? So I think it's extremely important for, the kind of continual conversations, because this is ongoing work and you really don't want folks to get burnt out by it. And so the way I think about it is like, what are those little wins? And one of the things that was discussed was, with the steps poster project. And so, one of the things that we did was we really intentionally decided to put on our walls of our agency, quotes of people who look like our customers, really saying things that we as an agency and organization aspired to. And really it was just kind of like a thought idea, like, okay, this is what we're gonna, we all thought this was a good idea. We're just going to go with it. And just the overwhelming response, not only from our staff, but also our customers, and one of our staff basically was like, thought that would entice, in a very rural county, like that would entice violence and bad behavior, which I thought was really interesting. And she came to me after we put them up and she said, like, I am shocked because I saw one of our parents basically put the poster on Facebook and actually noted that, my, child's Head Start program, took the time to, see this. And so it's extremely important to be able to have those kind of conversations, with our staff, but then also with our community and our customers. And so, this teacher just happened to see this post on Facebook and it made a major impact on her because she really didn't think we were going in, kind of a pertinent direction. Does that make sense?
It does. It absolutely makes sense.
Is my video working now, by the way?
We can see, I can see you.
Yay!
I can see you. But
Awesome.
but it's so, to your point, Rochelle, it's so important. And I think we talked about this a lot already, just about affirming people, giving people the sense of belonging. And I think that's really where we get to. But Angela, to your point, I can't stress enough, even just more than organizational vision and mission, you know, where are we going? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? What are the outcomes? We're, you know, we have many of our community action agencies on the call, and our agencies are focused on outcomes and really looking at data and doing all the things that we talked about even yesterday. And so we have to have that mindset. This cannot be this kind of nebulous, we're in it, we're talking, because at one point you're gonna get tired of talking about it, right? You know, we want to do it. We want to see wins. We want to see change. And so I think it's important to put that in. So Angela, I'm so glad you mentioned that. Anything else in terms of, I mean, and Angela, did we capture what you were thinking as well?
Yes, I think for the most part. And I know this is like a huge task for all of us to partake in. And I know some people have been working it for decades, but there, as everyone said, so many different layers. And there's always that thought of why not use the collective minds within your organization to focus in on one area so that poor people aren't doing all the work, because we don't, you know, when we just do it with a small group, you won't have all the creative information and vantage points of the entire agency, which should represent your community. So if it's broken down into different focus areas where people have those strengths to look at some framework and structures and accountability, then the movement will skyrocket, you know, at a quicker pace than, you know, just 3 people working on the all-encompassed.
So what I hear, thanks, Angela. What I hear from that is, and Rochelle and I can appreciate this, about making sure that it's, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it the best way, but making sure that it's, and you know, of course, I'm missing the most important word, implementation, right? How are we implementing it? Who's accountable for what? What departments are working on what, right? So really looking at this idea of implementation and really figuring out, you know, because that's how we embed the work. That's how we structurally put in place those things that we talked about wanting to go from here and there.
Who are the decision makers at the table? I think that's what I'm thinking when you say that, the decision makers at the table.
Great, okay, thanks, Heather. Heather's my partner in crime.
Hey, Winslow, can I just also add like the education piece?
Right.
You know, because like when we began this piece, the education, like our, you know, many of our staff had really never left Lycoming County,
Right.
you know, and really didn't experience, you know, different cultures, you know, they didn't really know anybody who didn't look like them. And so when we first started the education, they were like, why are we doing this? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's that why question, but it's being thoughtful and intentional and, you know, being able to answer that question as to why,
Right.
and also being able to, you know, make sure that everybody's coming into that continuum of education so that there's a value, right?
Right.
So like there's base in education, then there's like higher levels.
Right, okay. And I like that, Rochelle, because I think one of the panelists mentioned about always asking why. You know,
Yep.
that's education, that's training. You know, when people are asking why, we need to be able to explain and share and educate. So I'm glad. So I got the 5-minute mark from Leslie, but I want to just hit on two quick things if we can before we go back. One of them is what's working as we think about this continuum, and what do we need more of? Anyone want to offer maybe 2 or 3 quick points in terms of what's working as we think about this work?
Just the fact that we're diving into it.
Okay, we're jumping in. Great. Yeah. Love that. Anything else?
The continued conversation and education.
Yeah. So this this summit perhaps can be part of what's working.
Yes, because this
And
is
I
my
was gonna
first
say,
year
like-
recording this summit.
Yeah.
Wait,
This is the first year having the summit,
we
which
just
is
said
awesome.
that's right, right. What do we need more of?
Awareness.
Awareness. Okay.
Buy-in,
What was that?
buy-in, like executive leadership, board buy-in. You know, when I think of that organizationally, systemically, you know, typically your decision makers up here at the table making the decisions are white men, typically making those decisions for the rest of us. You know, so we need to get buy-in, and of course we're going to face that resistance. So
Okay, okay. I like that. That comes up a lot when we talk about this work, about the need for decision making to come from the top. And so I'm so glad you mentioned that, Heather, because it is one of the, what we would otherwise describe as one of the barriers to the work. You know, we can all really understand and know the necessity for it, but if we don't have folks who are driving it, and to your point, Angela, making sure we have accountability built in, we have systems in place to make sure it gets done. We have folks who are in charge of making sure things happen. So all of those things are ways that we can make sure the work gets done, so that we can maybe get to a point where it ends. Okay, it looks like the breakout rooms are going to close. I'm like so surprised that this went so quick. I really am. I thought we were gonna be like, we got 20 more minutes, but it was just such
15 seconds, you did a great job with the framework. You know what I'm saying? We got a good idea of that framework. So
good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Heather.
So what we need more of is more time to actually peel back the layers.
That's right. That's right. Thanks. All right, we're gonna go. See you all back. All right, welcome everybody. It looks like we're coming back. I'm not sure if everybody's back in the room, but looks like we're all back. I'm actually wanted to do, just go around to our facilities, a quick debrief of the rooms. I was in the room with Understanding the DEI Continuum. We had a really rich conversation about accountability and making sure we implement this work across systems, making sure we understand, you know, what's missing and what we need more of. So we had a really good conversation. I'll ask some of our other facilitators if they want to share out kind of what came out of their room. We'll start with Beck. Is Beck on the call? Yep. All right.
Sorry,
Beck.
I was just getting myself off mute. So right, we had a great conversation in our group. Thank you to those of you who shared a little bit and were part of the conversation. We really focused mainly on simple things that we can do from a culture perspective, because really when you think about hiring and retention issues from a perspective of DE&I, it's about, right, some culture things that have to happen first before you're really prepared